Welcome to Love Story with Lisa, where I share romantic audio stories. Today, I'll tell you a new love story. Fake sister. I'm back. And I'm taking back everything that was meant to be mine. You want to act? Fine, I'll crush you underfoot. I was supposed to glow with destiny, to dramatically announce that I had discovered the truth. I was the real heiress, switched at birth. I had thought my life was about to skyrocket overnight. But then the fake heiress suddenly burst into tears. So, now that you've found your real daughter, does that mean you don't want me anymore? The moment I heard that, I lifted my leg and kicked her away. Damn brat. If there's a dream home for babies, then I deserve to rehearse this scene for the second time. Alright, introduction over. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the story. My biological parents came from a top-tier elite family, a true powerhouse of wealth, with total assets worth hundreds of millions of yuan. Dare to imagine that? I know you don't dare, honestly, neither do I. But reading novels, that, I dare. That year, while I was slumped over my desk at lunch, chewing on spicy skewers and secretly reading a Mary Sue novel, my homeroom teacher's face suddenly appeared outside the classroom window. Vivian Wan. Come out. I jolted in shock, quickly forced myself to calm down, and closed the novel. As I stepped outside, I caught sight of my desk mate, straight-faced. Upright posture, seriously working on exam questions. Yeah, right. You little devil, don't think I didn't notice the chili oil still clinging to the corner of your mouth. But once I left the classroom, I realized something was wrong. It wasn't just Mr. Zhou standing there. My adoptive parents were there too, standing to one side, staring at me with complicated expressions. And beside them, a neatly dressed middle-aged couple, along with a girl about my age. My eyes instantly welled up with tears. I asked cautiously, Mr. Zhou, do we have to call parents now just for eating spicy skewers? Mr. Zhou's eyebrow twitched. Before he could even get angry, the unfamiliar couple beside him suddenly rushed forward, and wrapped me tightly in their arms, so tightly that I nearly suffocated. I froze on the spot. Completely stunned, I looked toward my adoptive parents in shock, but they only lowered their heads in silence. Behind them, the girl bit her lip. Her face had gone pale. Mr. Zhou spoke with visible difficulty. Vivian. We just finished investigating. When you were born, the hospital made a mistake and switched the babies. They are your biological parents. That's why they came to school today, to find you. My mouth fell open, wide enough to fit an entire egg. My classmates had ears sharper than hunting dogs. At that moment, not a single one of them was paying attention to self-study. They all crowded around the windows, watching the spectacle, before I could even process what was happening. My desk mate's loud voice rang out from the window and snapped me back to reality. Wait, aren't those the chairman of the Su Group and his wife? They're regulars in the local news. Holy shit, Vivian, you're actually a real heiress? No way. My brain short-circuited for a second, and an absurd thought flashed through my mind. Could it be that my adoptive parents also had some secret child living somewhere outside? I snapped awake from that ridiculous train of thought. What the hell? This kind of over-the-top soap opera plot. This wealth falling straight from the sky. Was it really my turn now? I was just about to look back at my adoptive parents, when the girl beside me, who had been silent all this time, suddenly started crying again. Now that you've found your real daughter, does that mean you don't need me anymore? The woman who had just been holding me, calling me her precious treasure, instinctively loosened her grip. Even the man, my so-called biological father, hurried over to embrace the girl instead. How could that be, Cecilia? You'll always be our precious daughter. The expressions on my adoptive parents' faces grew even darker. Before anyone could react, I lifted my leg and kicked her. Damn brat. When I stepped into the luxury car worth tens of millions. I still felt like I was dreaming. Cecilia Sue wore a deeply wronged expression, nestled in the arms of the woman I was supposed to call Mom. Her eyes shimmered with tears, soft sobs escaping her lips. Anyone who saw her would feel sympathy. Her sobs came out soft and pitiful, fragile enough to make anyone feel sorry for her. Sure enough, it didn't take long before my so-called biological father spoke up. "Vivian, apologize to Cecilia," he said. "How could you raise your hand and hit her?" I glanced at Cecilia Sue. There was a faint trace of smugness hidden in her eyes. I sneered inwardly. If I hadn't just caught her secretly rolling her eyes at me, I wouldn't even have bothered kicking her. It would have dirted my foot, but on the surface, I merely sighed. "Driver, please let me off at the intersection ahead." The driver froze, clearly flustered. My conveniently acquired parents immediately panicked. "What's wrong? Didn't we already agree you'd move in with us? Why do you suddenly want to get out of the car?" I quietly pinched myself, tears welling up in my eyes on cue. "We haven't even reached your home yet, and I already have to apologize to an outsider. So what's the point of moving in? I'd just be suffering grievances every day anyway." That single word, outsider, instantly twisted Cecilia Sue's expression. Then I took out my phone and pretended to make a call. "Mom, Dad. You've never let me suffer any grievance before. It was just a little play fight with someone my age, and I still had to apologize. There are too many rules in your world. I don't have the fortune to belong there." I looked as if I was about to dial the number and complain for real. At that moment, even the Sue parents couldn't keep their composure anymore. After all, before we left earlier, my adoptive parents had been holding their hands tightly, repeatedly asking them to take good care of both me and Cecilia. My biological mother shot a sharp look at my biological father, then quickly put on a placating smile and coaxed me. "Vivian, don't take it to heart. Your dad just doesn't know how to speak properly. Mom understands, you and Cecilia were only joking around. Cecilia wouldn't hold it against you, right?" She looked at Cecilia pleadingly. Under the combined gaze of both parents, Cecilia could only nod stiffly. But the way she looked at me, it was as if her eyes had been dipped in poison. I felt delighted. Good. The more disgusted she was, the better. "I knew it," I said sweetly. "Little sister Cecilia is so generous. She definitely wouldn't argue with me. We're still good sisters, right?" Cecilia clenched her teeth so hard I could almost hear it grind. Then forced a stiff smile and nodded. Only then did Mr. Sue and Mrs. Sue finally relax. Mrs. Sue probably thought she had handled things very fairly, but in reality, she never once let go of Cecilia's hand, occasionally even comforting her in a low voice. Who was close, and who was distant? One glance was enough to tell. I lowered my eyes and said nothing. Mrs. Sue seemed to want to get closer to me as well, and started searching for something to say. "Vivian, I've looked into it," she said. "Your current school isn't very good. Don't worry. Your father and I have already arranged everything. When the time comes, you'll transfer to the same school Cecilia attends. The two of you can look out for each other." The smile on my lips disappeared. Even my tone turned noticeably colder. "Mom," I said, "you're transferring my school?" Mrs. Sue hesitated, sensing my displeasure, then nodded. My tone sharpened. "I'm in my final year now. A major decision like transferring schools. Why wasn't this discussed with me first?" My biological father, already embarrassed by me earlier, frowned and showed clear irritation. "What kind of attitude is that?" he snapped. "Is this how your adoptive parents taught you to speak to elders? We're transferring you for your own good. The school you'll be attending is the #1 key high school in the city. So many people try to get in, and can't, no matter how hard they push. Cecilia immediately sensed an opportunity to stir the pot. She added fuel to the fire, her expression gentle as she softly tried to persuade me. "That's right, sister, our school is really good," Cecilia said softly. "Please don't be unhappy. Mom and Dad are only doing this for your own good. As for the quality of teaching at your original school..." She paused delicately, then continued, "It's just a little worse, just a little." The unspoken words, "Your school is trash," were practically written all over her face. Mr. Su let out a cold snort. Mrs. Su quickly shook his hand, signaling him not to say anything more. I let out a cold laugh. "How my parents taught me is none of your concern," I said flatly. "If you don't like it, there's nothing you can do. After all, you've never raised me for a single day. Isn't that right?" The expressions on my conveniently acquired parents instantly turned ugly. They had nothing to say. I glanced at Cecilia, who was clearly enjoying the situation, and spoke in a light, teasing tone. "Little sister Cecilia, you're studying at the #1 key high school in the city, so why is it that I've heard you're always ranked near the bottom? Of course, your room for improvement is huge. Unlike me, I've always been in the city's top 10. My room for improvement is just too small." Cecilia's face flushed bright red. She immediately turned away, not daring to look at me again. Mr. Su and Mrs. Su both knew they were in the wrong now. Awkwardly, they remained silent. I calmly continued, "I won't be transferring schools. Choosing a strong teaching team is important, just like valuing oneself. And the school you look down on so much also ranks among the city's top 4 key schools. It lacks neither talent nor potential." The Su family's villa was enormous, I could only say. Television dramas hadn't exaggerated at all. When Cecilia noticed the amazement on my face, her own expression immediately spelled out 4 words, "Country bumpkin." Mrs. Su held my hand and led me inside. After a brief introduction to the household, the house staff quickly prepared dinner. It was genuinely lavish. I ate calmly, under Cecilia's rolling eyes. By then, both Mr. Su and Mrs. Su had softened their moods. They said they respected my decision, and would no longer force me to transfer schools. That night, lying on the soft mattress, I felt no trace of sleepiness. I felt no sense of belonging to this place at all. Instead, I missed the small, warm room my parents had prepared for me. I wondered if Mom and Dad were already asleep. Probably not. The moon outside the window was perfectly round. Who was it thinking of? The next morning, Mr. Su left early for work. Mrs. Su enthusiastically called us downstairs for breakfast. But the meal was almost entirely Western: milk, bread, salad. I had absolutely no appetite. Noticing the glint of satisfaction in Cecilia's eyes, I sneered inwardly. Last night, after dinner, I had clearly said that I didn't like Western food. The cook had been standing right there, yet today, they still prepared a Western-style breakfast I disliked. It seemed that this so-called young heiress, me, was nothing more than a decorative object. Even if something went wrong, it didn't really matter. Mrs. Su asked gently, "Is it not to your taste?" Cecilia's delicate face immediately showed guilt. "I'm really sorry, sister," she said softly. "In the past, because I liked Western food, Auntie always cooked according to my preferences." She probably didn't mean it. It's too late to change it now, but later on the way to school, I'll ask the driver to buy the breakfast you like, okay? That single stretch of words, perfect. Flawless. Not only did it subtly assert ownership, it also made it very clear who the real master of this house was. And on top of that, it left no trace at all, making Mrs. Su and the cook feel that Cecilia was considerate, sensible, and deeply loving toward her sister. At that moment, if I refused and got angry, then I would be the one labeled as unreasonable. So I smiled, trying to drag me out as the opposing example. Huh, fine. I said nothing at all, just slowly drank my milk. Then I called out to the cook, "Auntie." The cook looked enthusiastic as she stepped forward. "Yes, Miss Vivian?" "What is it?" Mrs. Sue also wore a confused expression. Cecilia Sue had no idea what I was about to do, clearly assuming I was about to lecture the cook, her face full of anticipation, as if waiting for a good show. I smiled faintly and pointed at the bag the cook had left in the kitchen. "Auntie," I said gently, "the food itself may not be worth much money, but if word gets out that you're stealing food from the owner's house, it wouldn't sound very nice, would it?" The cook's face instantly turned pale. She stammered, trying to deny it. Mrs. Sue's expression changed. The smile on Cecilia Sue's lips slowly disappeared. The other house staff looked at each other in panic. One of them, receiving a signal from Mrs. Sue, picked up the bag. Then, under the cook's crumbling expression, pork ribs, cotton candy, and various other items fell out one by one onto the floor. Mrs. Sue's chest heaved with anger. "Auntie Lee," she said sharply, "I pay a high salary to hire you to cook for this family, not to steal things from my home. We've never treated you badly, on the contrary, you've enjoyed many benefits during holidays. So why would you do something like this?" Auntie Lee's face flushed red as she stammered, mumbling that it was just greed. Cecilia Sue's expression darkened unpredictably. Her eyes filled with disbelief as she stared at me. "Right on cue," I spoke. "I have a habit of waking up early to use the bathroom," I said calmly. "I'm not familiar with this house yet, so I came downstairs early this morning." I didn't expect to see Auntie Lee taking food out of the refrigerator and stuffing it into her bag. Her movements were far too practiced. This clearly wasn't her first time. She should be dismissed immediately. After hearing my words, Mrs. Sue fired Auntie Lee on the spot, right in front of everyone. Auntie Lee begged in shame, but Mrs. Sue was so angry she didn't even bother listening, and went straight upstairs. I looked at Auntie Lee, now completely dazed, as well as the other house staff who were trembling with fear. Then I said slowly, "Remember your identities. Who is the real master of this house?" Under Cecilia Sue's deathly pale expression, and the ingratiating gazes of the other staff, I picked up my bag, and walked out the door. School was extremely lively that day. Everyone gathered around me, curious about what life in a wealthy family was like. I thought for a moment, then answered with 4 profound words: internal strife. Everyone wore the same expression, as expected. They all expressed that if I ever needed anything, they would never refuse to help. I smiled, and noticed one person, who hadn't joined the commotion at all. My neighbor, also the top student in our grade, the one who had always pressed me down by a single rank, Ethan D. He sat quietly reading. His refined, composed face completely expressionless, as if none of this had anything to do with him. After school, I didn't head home right away. Instead, I grabbed Ethan D. He turned around and looked at me silently. "How are my parents?" I asked. He rarely frowned. After a long silence, his voice was very light. "I think you should go back and see for yourself." I let out a bitter laugh, leaning against the desk. How should I put it? Right now, I'm standing at the center of the vortex. Going back at this moment wouldn't really change anything. Hearing that, he finally lifted his gaze. His dark, well-defined brows showed a hint of confusion. "So you'll just leave things like this? You could choose to go back." I replied calmly, "There are some things I need to make clear. And besides, you know me. I've always been an ambitious person. If there are resources I can use, I have no reason to refuse them." Ethan D. stayed silent for a long moment. In the end, he turned around, as if about to leave. "I'll keep an eye on Uncle and Auntie for you," he said. but I hope you can hold on to what you originally decided. I answered softly, thank you. Don't worry. I will. His back paused for a moment. It seemed like he murmured something under his breath. But I didn't hear it clearly, seeing that it was already dark. I let out a sigh and got into the car, heading back to the Sioux residence. The Sioux family home was unusually lively that day. They had invited many people of status, clearly preparing to announce my identity. However, due to my firm insistence, I did not change my surname to Sioux, and was still called Vivian Wan. When Mr. Sioux and Mrs. Sioux saw me return, Mrs. Sioux lowered her voice and told me to go upstairs and change clothes. Cecilia Sioux had come back early. She was dressed exquisitely, elegant and refined, chatting with several boys and girls around her age. When they saw me, a few of them first looked at me down their noses. Almost immediately, their faces filled with disdain, as they whispered something to Cecilia. Just as I was about to go upstairs to change, Cecilia and the people beside her walked over. One of the boys laughed loudly and asked, "Hey, what trashy school uniform is that from?" Cecilia looked as if she were defending me, speaking gently. "Don't say nonsense. Sister Vivian is one of the city's top 10 students." The group of boys and girls seemed to have heard the funniest joke ever. They burst into laughter. "So what if she's ranked first?" "Cecilia, don't you know? With our family backgrounds, who actually cares about grades?" "Exactly, only poor people with no money want to change their fate through studying. My family has done business for 3 generations. Do you think 10 years of bitter studying can compare to that?" I smiled faintly, tapped my phone screen, then looked up at Cecilia, who was clearly enjoying my humiliation. "Are all your friends like this?" I asked lightly. "No wonder your academic performance is so bad. People who aren't of the same kind can't walk the same path." Cecilia froze in shock, clearly unable to believe what I had just said. The people around her instantly exploded. "What did you say? A country bumpkin like you. Are you tired of living?" Some of the boys even tried to shove me. I was quickly surrounded by a group of male students. Very soon, someone at the party noticed that something was wrong, and people began gathering around. "What's going on?" My conveniently acquired parents frowned as they looked at me. Cecilia bit her lip, her face full of grievance, yet she didn't say a single word. The so-called friends beside her, in an instant, became extraordinarily clever. One after another, they all looked as if they had suffered a great injustice. "Auntie, your daughter thinks our grades are bad, and looks down on us." "That's right, we don't even want to talk to her anymore." She even mocked Cecilia's grades. "So what if Cecilia's grades aren't good? She's such a kind person, everyone likes her." In the blink of an eye, 7 or 8 mouths accused me at once. They secretly shot me malicious, mocking looks. Mr. Sioux and Mrs. Sioux's expressions turned unpleasant. The way Mr. Sioux looked at me was filled with disdain, as if confirming that I was indeed inferior to Cecilia. The parents of those young people around me, along with influential figures from various industries in the city, also gathered around. Their gazes toward me were anything but friendly. "A young person should be a bit more humble," someone said. Mrs. Sioux, trying to smooth things over, forced a smile. "They're all just children," she said. "A bit of a misunderstanding, nothing serious." Then she turned to me. "Vivian, hurry up and apologize to Cecilia, and to her friends." Ethan D. remained silent for a long moment. In the end, he turned away, as if preparing to leave. "I'll keep an eye on Uncle and Aunt for you," he said quietly. "But I hope you can hold on to your original resolve." I answered softly, "Thank you. Don't worry. I will." His retreating figure paused for a brief moment, as though he murmured something under his breath. but I couldn't hear it clearly. Seeing that night had already fallen, I let out a sigh, got into the car, and headed back to the Sue family residence. The Sue household was unusually lively that evening. Many people of status had been invited. They were planning to formally announce my identity, except that, due to my firm insistence, I had not changed my surname to Sue and was still introduced as Vivian Wan, not Vivian Sue. When Mrs. Sue saw me return, she lowered her voice and told me to go upstairs and change my clothes. Sophie Sue had arrived early. She was dressed exquisitely and elegantly, chatting animatedly with several young men and women around her age. The moment they noticed me, a few of them immediately looked me up and down with disdain, then turned to Sophie and whispered something. Their faces openly contemptuous. I was just about to go upstairs to change when Sophie and the people beside her stepped toward me. A male student laughed loudly and asked, "What garbage school uniform is that from?" Sophie Sue looked as though she were defending the weak. With a reproachful tone, she said, "Jing, don't talk nonsense. Sister Vivian is one of the top 10 students in our city." The group of boys and girls burst into laughter, as if they had just heard a great joke. "So what if she's ranked first?" One of them scoffed. "Chi, don't tell me you don't know, given our family backgrounds, who actually cares about grades?" "Exactly," another chimed in. "Only poor ghosts with no money want to change their fate through studying." "My family's been in business for 3 generations, someone said smugly. 10 years of miserable studying, how could that ever compare to me?" I smiled faintly, tapped my phone screen, then lifted my head and looked at Sophie Sue, who was clearly enjoying others' embarrassment. "So all your friends are cut from the same cloth?" I asked calmly. "No wonder your academic results are so poor. People who aren't of the same kind really can't be friends." Sophie froze, staring at me in disbelief. The people around her immediately exploded. "What did you just say? A country bumpkin like you, are you asking for trouble?" A few of the boys even tried to shove me. I was quickly surrounded. The commotion caught attention at the banquet, and people began to gather. "What's going on?" Mr. and Mrs. Sue, my so-called convenient parents, frowned as they looked at me. Sophie Sue bit her lip, her face full of grievance, yet she didn't say a word. Her so-called friends instantly became extraordinarily clever, each one looking as if they had suffered some tremendous injustice. "Auntie," one of them complained, "your daughter looks down on our grades and despises us." "That's right. We don't even want to talk to her anymore." She even mocked Chi-Chi's grades. "So what if Chi-Chi's aren't good? She's kind-hearted, everyone likes her." 7 or 8 mouths spoke at once, accusing me, while secretly shooting me hostile, mocking glances. Mr. and Mrs. Sue's expressions darkened. Mr. Sue looked at me with clear disdain, as if confirming that I truly could never compare to Sophie. The parents of those young people, along with several prominent figures from various industries in the city, also gathered around, their gazes unfriendly. "Young people should learn to be humble," someone said pointedly, trying to smooth things over. Mrs. Sue forced a smile. "They're all just kids, making a scene and giving everyone a laugh. Vivian, hurry and apologize to Chi and her friends." Sophie Sue smiled faintly. The group of malicious friends around her also wore smug, satisfied expressions, as if they had finally enjoyed a good show. I lazily swept my gaze over the surrounding parents. "May I ask all of you something?" I said calmly. "You're all leaders in your respective fields, well-read and experienced. Surely you can answer this for me: is studying useful?" They were stunned for a moment, Then many of them laughed. How could it not be useful? Without knowledge and education, how could one be competent at work? And without competence, how could one create a good life? Sophie Sue and her friends fell silent, clearly unsure what I was about to do next. I smiled, raised my brows, and looked at Sophie and her group with a half-smile. But, uncles and aunties, I continued, your children don't seem to feel ashamed of their grades at all. As I spoke, I turned on my phone and played the recording. What garbage school uniform is that from? So what if she's ranked first? My family's been in business for 3 generations. 10 years of miserable studying. How could that ever compare to me? The surroundings fell dead silent. Sophie Sue and her group all turned pale. The righteous expressions on the parents' faces instantly darkened. They exchanged awkward glances, many of them shooting furious looks at their own children, then hurriedly began to deflect. Oh, they're just kids who don't know any better. They haven't suffered hardships yet, don't understand how big the world is. Vivian, don't lower yourself to their level. Yes, don't take it to heart. Come on, hurry and apologize. Mr. Sue laughed loudly and waved his hand, speaking in a composed tone. My wife and I already said it earlier, it's just kids joking around. Vivian, how could you take it seriously? Chi-Chi's friends are also Vivian's friends. It's fine, Sophie Sue nodded stiffly, forcing a rigid smile. I sneered inwardly. Friends? They weren't worthy. Just a bunch of arrogant second-generation rich kids, children of wealth who only knew how to spend their parents' money, indulging themselves extravagantly. Some of the youths who had been so aggressive earlier now looked displeased. A few even muttered, we didn't do anything wrong. I smiled and slowly walked toward the staircase. There are many people in this world who come from good families and still work hard, I said indifferently. But there are also those who, because they were born into privilege, do nothing but eat their fill and wait for death, yet still feel smugly superior. I gave a soft laugh. They don't realize that truly outstanding people can't even be bothered to spare them a glance. Without caring about the flushed faces of the group standing at the foot of the stairs, I cast a meaningful look at those so-called second-generation heirs. No wonder not a single one of you can really compete. You're simply not the same kind of people. Shrugging, I turned and stood on the second-floor landing. Angry shouts echoed from below, and it seemed the parents' faces didn't look too good either. Mrs. Sue's eyes were full of embarrassment. She clearly hadn't expected me to be so uncompromising. A flash of secret delight appeared in Sophie Sue's eyes, but when she looked at Mr. Sue, worry surfaced instead. Dad, she asked softly, wasn't what my sister said a bit too much? Mr. Sue was about to speak, ready to lecture me. I smiled, raised my phone, and said calmly, this farce should end here. You're all intelligent people. Today's banquet was specially held by the Sue family for me, yet in a banquet like this, I've been turned into the target of public criticism. Who benefits the most from this? Everyone here probably knows the answer already. Cecilia Sue stiffened instantly. As expected, these people from wealthy families reacted extremely fast. Several of them cast covert glances in her direction. Mr. Sue and Mrs. Sue both frowned at once. What nonsense are you talking about? Mr. Sue scolded. How could anyone want to harm you? You're clearly overthinking this. Vivian. Mrs. Sue also wrapped an arm around Cecilia, gently comforting her. Don't blame yourself, Chi-Chi, your parents understand. Cecilia bit her lip, her eyes filling with tears, as if she were deeply moved, but the parents standing nearby exchanged looks. A flash of understanding. mixed with displeasure, flickered in their eyes. Some of them even reached out and yanked their own children back, warning them silently with sharp looks. Unfortunately, Cecilia's so-called friends, that same second-gen clique, were just as insincere as ever. They rolled their eyes, curled their lips, clearly unconvinced and unwilling to accept the situation. In the end, I smiled faintly, resting my hand on the stair railing. I calmly announced to everyone below, next month, I will be representing my school in the Nebula International Science Competition, also known as the Global Science and Technology Competition. There's no need for me to explain the value of this competition. At the moment, my team is still short 4 members. I'd be happy to make new friends. If anyone is interested in participating, you're welcome to contact me. The eyes of many parents in the hall immediately lit up. That night, Mr. Su and Mrs. Su came to my room. Mr. Su cleared his throat, glanced at his wife, and finally spoke. Vivian, do you have confidence in the Nebula competition? I raised my brows, placed the test papers in my hand down, and didn't answer him directly. What is it, Chairman Su? Mr. Su shot Mrs. Su a look. Mrs. Su seemed embarrassed, but she still forced herself to speak. Well, Vivian, about this competition, could you bring your younger sister, Cecilia, along with you? We know she'll only hold you back, of course. She doesn't need to do anything at all. Just put her name on the team list. Would that be all right? Even though I had mentally prepared myself, the shamelessness of these convenient parents still disgusted me. She wouldn't do anything, yet they still wanted her name included. And they said it so righteously, as if they were thinking for my sake. It was so absurd that I actually laughed in anger, seeing my refusal written plainly on my face. Mr. Su frowned. Stand upright and fear no shadows, he said firmly. The Nebula competition is extremely valuable. Winning an award could earn direct admission to a top overseas university. Bringing your sister along, wouldn't that just be keeping opportunities within the family? Mrs. Su nodded quickly in agreement. I let out a cold laugh. Did Cecilia Su ask you to come? I asked flatly, or did you decide this on your own? The two of them looked at each other. Mrs. Su gave an awkward smile. We came on our own. As parents, of course we want to plan the best path for all of you children. It was only at that moment that I let out a bitter smile inside my heart. This was real disappointment. But thankfully, my expectations had never been very high to begin with. I looked at the two of them seriously. My voice cold and steady. I can take Cecilia with me. There's just one condition. After this year's college entrance exams, I will formally join the Su group. Mr. Su hesitated. In the end, he agreed. A trace of contempt flickered through his eyes, probably thinking that a country girl like me, even if I joined the company, could never stir up any waves. How could I possibly compare to Cecilia Su, whom he had carefully cultivated since childhood? After that, I received more than a dozen friend requests in succession. Without exception, they all came from the same people. The second-gen clique from that banquet in the city. They all wanted to join the Nebula competition. Their messages were polite, courteous, flawless. You'd never be able to tell that just days ago, these were the same people who had looked down on me with nothing but contempt. I smiled to myself. They had probably already been warned by their parents, and had also realized just how important this competition was. I accepted the friend requests from the 3 profiles whose avatars looked the most agreeable. The 3 of them seemed surprised, clearly not expecting me to accept their requests so readily. I created a group chat and added the 3 of them in. We briefly discussed the interview schedule related to the competition. After some hesitation, all 3 of them chose this coming Sunday, their tone firm and resolute. I glanced at the messages on my phone and replied, "Got it." After exiting WeChat, I opened my contacts and stared at a familiar string of numbers. Unable to help myself, I dialed. The call was answered instantly. "Hello? Is that Vivian?" Mom's voice was still loud, her joy mixed with cautious restraint, making my chest ache uncontrollably. "Yes, Mom," I replied. There was still noise on the other end of the line. She was probably serving customers at the noodle shop. Very quickly, it quieted down. "I'll go to the back kitchen and talk to you," Mom said softly. "It's not convenient here." "Your dad is in the back." Dad's hearty laughter rang through the phone. "Vivian, when are you coming back to see us? I'll make steamed buns for you, your favorite cabbage and pork rolls too." My eyes reddened. I couldn't help smiling. "Okay, Dad." "Mom, I'll come back this Saturday." After thinking for a moment, my voice lowered. "Cecilia will be coming back with me too." At the dinner table, after I brought this up to Mr. Sue and Mrs. Sue, the two of them exchanged a glance and both agreed. Cecilia Sue also smiled faintly. "Sure, sis. I've been wanting to find some time to visit anyway," she said gently. After all, they did give me life." Seeing how sensible Cecilia seemed, Mr. and Mrs. Sue were clearly pleased and nodded in approval. On Saturday, the Sue family's driver took Cecilia and me back to my old home. My parents had been waiting at the door since early morning. The noodle shop hadn't even opened that day. When they saw me and Cecilia step out of the car, their brows were filled with excitement and joy. "You're here. Hurry, come inside." But Cecilia got out of the car slowly, her face full of disgust as she looked around. "So this is where you grew up, sis?" I smiled lightly. "What's wrong?" After hearing Cecilia's words, my parents' expressions clearly stiffened with embarrassment. They looked at the two of us, at a loss. Cecilia snorted, dropping all pretense. She rolled her eyes, her words dripping with superiority. "What a filthy, backwater place. Just stepping in here dirties my shoes." My parents' faces instantly turned pale. They stood there in shock, speechless. I sneered. "Did you eat too much this morning? Why does your mouth stink so badly? Your living conditions are great, sure, but that doesn't seem to come with good academic performance. A parasite who eats her fill and waits to die. Who do you think you are, shouting like this?" I shot back without the slightest courtesy. Cecilia's face flushed red with anger. Her fingers trembled as she pointed at me. My parents couldn't bear to see their daughters arguing. They pressed their lips together and pulled me into their arms. Cecilia suddenly calmed down. She looked at me with a condescending gaze, her tone arrogant and cold. "So what if your grades are good? Do you really think Mom and Dad will hand the Sue family over to you? Don't forget, I'm the heir they carefully cultivated for 17 years. Why do you think they brought you back? You're nothing more than a stepping stone for me. Do you honestly believe that someone stuck in the mud like you could ever amount to anything?" I wasn't angry. I slowly lifted my head and looked straight at her. "Is that so?" Behind us, my parents stared at Cecilia in disbelief. After a long silence, Mom clenched her teeth, her voice trembling. "You are not our daughter. We don't need you anymore. We don't acknowledge you." Cecilia laughed contemptuously, her smile exaggerated and mocking. "Oh, please, Auntie. Who would want to be your daughter with conditions like this? I'm actually very glad you mistook me for Vivian Wan." After saying that, she looked at me with undisguised ridicule. "I'll tell you this, today, even if you record everything and show it to them, it'll be useless. Because these are exactly the things they taught me, ever since I was little. I'm the real heir, the one the Sue family painstakingly raised. After saying that, she stepped back into the car with her head held high. The driver drove off immediately, without even asking for my opinion. My parents hugged me tightly, their tears soaked into my neck. I'm so sorry, Vivian. It's all our fault. We've hurt you. My eyes burned with pain, but the heavy stone lodged in my chest finally fell away. Even if my parents were hurt, long pain was worse than short pain. My goal had already been achieved, rather than letting them suffer Cecilia's torment in the future. Only to sever ties later. It was better that I took this step today. It's okay, I said softly. I love you both very much. And I'm truly grateful to you. All right, I added gently. The buns on the table are getting cold. Let's go inside. On Sunday, the three boys preparing to participate in the Nebula International Science Competition arrived at the Sue family villa. The three of them exchanged looks but didn't dare look directly at me. All right, I said calmly. Stop staring at each other. What happened before, I won't hold against you. How important this competition is, I won't say much more. Once you join my team, do what needs to be done. Don't overthink it. The three of them nodded immediately, as if they had just been granted amnesty. After explaining the theme of this year's project, I assigned tasks to each of them. One of the boys hesitated for a long time, but finally couldn't hold it in anymore. Isn't a team supposed to have 5 people? He asked. Where's the last one? I smiled lightly, unfazed. Oh, there's still one more, I said casually. Someone you all know, Cecilia Sue. My parents already told me that her role will be dragging everyone down. All you need to do is write her name in once everything's finished. At that, the three of them immediately looked furious, but none of them dared to speak up. I shrugged, signaling that I had no other choice, but the corner of my lips quietly curved upward. The final year of high school passed quickly. Preparation for the Nebula International Science Competition progressed smoothly. Thanks to the efforts of myself and the other 3 team members, everything advanced steadily. During this time, Ethan D helped me quite a lot. He just refused to admit it himself. How should I put it? Although the 3 team members had a terrible first impression of me at that banquet, they turned out to be highly responsible people. They completed every task I assigned seriously, and even gave me a great deal of feedback. From their initial silent dissatisfaction and resistance, they gradually began chasing after me and calling me Sister Vi. However, their attitude towards Cecilia, who had never actually shown up to do any work, also began to change. At first, they were willing to tolerate her as an ordinary teammate and turn a blind eye to her behavior, but Cecilia kept courting disaster. After hearing that we had a private group chat, she demanded that I add her in, yet after joining, she ignored all team tasks entirely. Instead, she liked to play commander. One moment she said my project theme wasn't good enough. The next, she claimed some members' task arrangement was inappropriate. After this happened several times, one male student finally snapped and sent a message directly into the group. Shut up and get to work. If you're not doing anything, stop running your mouth. Who do you think you are, acting so important? Cecilia threw a fit at home after that, but Mr. Sue and Mrs. Sue had no way to help her. Deep down, they also believed the boy was right. After hearing our finalized plan and reviewing the results, Cecilia glared and demanded that I send the materials to her. I smiled meaningfully and sent her a document that very night. Cecilia was overjoyed after receiving it, but on the night before all submissions were due, she suddenly came to see me. She said she wanted to leave the team. Her face was full of disdain, her tone dripping with mockery. I already have a better team, she said. I don't need yours. I laughed softly, sure. That night, When the remaining 3 team members found out, they were furious. Some of them even wanted to storm into the Sue family villa and beat Cecilia up. I stopped them. Messages in the group chat exploded non-stop. What do we do now? We don't have 5 people. Without that, we can't compete. Do we have to find someone temporary just to fill the numbers? But letting someone do nothing and still put their name in, I'm not okay with that. Right. Sister Vi, what should we do? I calmly sent a message. It's fine. There's someone willing to be a member of our team. And he's someone who's already made major contributions to our work. Ethan D joined our team shortly afterward, after I explained to the other 3 about his silent contributions behind the scenes. The doubts in their hearts finally disappeared. They unanimously agreed to let Ethan D join the team. Our competition results were submitted smoothly. After Cecilia Sue left our group and joined another one, whenever we occasionally ran into each other, her personality became even more strange. Her brows always carried a hidden smugness. On the day the results were announced, Cecilia's new team and our team were seated right next to each other. I glanced at a few familiar girls, and remembered that they were the very ones who had fiercely defended Cecilia at the banquet before. At this moment, several of them were looking at us, with expressions like they were watching a good show. Cecilia sat in the center, looking at me down her nose, full of undisguised glee. Sister, she said sweetly, don't cry later, okay? Ethan D frowned. What are they trying to pull? The other 3 team members also looked confused. I smiled faintly, unconcerned. Earlier, I said calmly, Cecilia asked me about our team's project plan and final results. The 3 of them widened their eyes. No way, she has no shame at all. Sister Vi, you didn't really hand it to her, did you? Ethan D also glanced at me, not saying anything, but helplessness flickered in his eyes. I smiled, raised one finger, and lightly pressed it to my lips. Shoo, I whispered to the 3 of them, don't worry. Just enjoy the show. Before long, the 5 official judges took their seats. The atmosphere instantly became lively, after a brief opening introduction. One of the judges suddenly grew serious. The Nebula competition has always been an internationally recognized and highly respected event, he said. We uphold fairness and justice. All contestants and teams are treated equally. However, this year, an incident of plagiarism has occurred. It is truly disgraceful. As soon as the judge's words fell, there was a brief moment of silence, followed by an uproar. Who was it? Which team was shameless enough to plagiarize at the Nebula competition? Being publicly accused here, how could they ever show their faces again? My God, how can there be such a disgusting team, stealing other people's ideas? On the other side, Cecilia and the girls around her wore smug smiles. One of them suddenly spoke loudly, her tone sharp and confident. I mean, Vivian Wan, your skin is really thick. You still won't admit you copied our work? Her voice instantly drew everyone's attention. All eyes suddenly focused on the 5 of us. Suspicious whispers spread through the room. We seemed to be isolated in an instant. The other 3 team members began sweating nervously. It's obvious you plagiarized us. The girl continued. I gave the 3 of them a reassuring look. They slowly calmed down. Then I looked straight at the girl who had spoken. Smiling lightly, don't rush, I said. The judges haven't even announced which team plagiarized yet. You're getting a bit too impatient. She curled her lips and snorted disdainfully. At that moment, Cecilia leaned closer and whispered into my ear, smiling, Sister, don't you think that with evidence, the judges can easily rule that you plagiarized us? If you think so, you're far too naive. She covered her mouth and laughed, her eyes full of contempt. A country bumpkin like you probably doesn't even know one of the Nebula judges is Fifi's uncle. The girl named Fifi lifted her chin proudly, looking at me with triumph. I curled my lips. Oh? Is that so? At that moment, the judge seated at the center spoke again. His voice was filled with anger and disgust. I truly did not expect an international high school to produce students like this. To have the audacity to plagiarize so brazenly. What's worse, the work that was plagiarized is the championship-winning project from last year. Just one word. Shameful. As soon as his words fell, Cecilia's smile froze. She stared at the judges in disbelief. Then she turned to look at her so-called good friends, who were now also staring blankly, full of doubt. Finally, her gaze slowly landed on me. Sister. You set me up? I leaned close to her ear, smiling softly. Little sister, I whispered, you really haven't bothered to look at the award-winning projects from the past few years, have you? That document I sent you wasn't our team's work at all. It was the Nebula Competition's championship project from last year. If you had paid even a little attention to this competition, if you were willing to spend just a bit of time and effort to understand it, you wouldn't be standing here right now. There were only 3 teams from international schools in attendance. The other 2 teams immediately denied any involvement. Only Cecilia Sue's group looked as if they were about to collapse, panic written all over their faces. Anyone with eyes could tell who the judges were talking about. Oh my God, students from an international school, and they actually dared to plagiarize the championship-winning work of the Nebula International Science Competition? Did they seriously think the judges wouldn't remember last year's winning project? Unbelievable. Just moments ago, they still had the nerve to accuse others of copying them. Copying what? A championship piece. It was laughable. Right at that moment, Fiona suddenly raised her hand and slapped Cecilia hard across the face. If you hadn't sworn to me that this work had no problems, Fiona shouted, her voice sharp with fury, how would I have agreed to team up with you? You've made a complete fool of me. Just wait, you're dead. The remaining 3 girls immediately turned on each other, snapping like dogs in a cage. In the end, she's fake through and through, never amounted to anything. Don't look at us. She tricked us. She said she stole thee from her sister's group. Who would have known it was last year's championship work? Unfortunately for them, the people around weren't so easily fooled, so they really plagiarized someone else's work? And ended up exposing themselves, clumsy and brainless. This is terrifying. Authorities should punish people like this severely. Cecilia, her face flushed red from the slap, stood amid the accusations and mocking stares. Like a madwoman, she screamed at Fiona, and you're some saint now? Wasn't it you who said your uncle was a judge for Nebula? You said he could manipulate things behind the scenes. You said even if we copied Vivian, the unlucky one would only ever be Vivian. The surrounding crowd was utterly stunned. Fiona finally panicked. She turned toward one of the judges on stage, her eyes filled with desperate pleading, but when that judge met the strange, probing gazes of the other 4 judges, and the countless eyes watching from the audience, cold sweat began pouring down his back. Don't talk nonsense, he said sharply. Yes, she is my niece. But I have never, not once, acted improperly for personal gain. Facing the overwhelming suspicion in everyone's eyes, he knew it instantly. His career was over, his reputation was finished. He glared furiously at Cecilia and the others in the audience. They had used him, yet not a single one of them could say a word in their defense. In the end, several of them broke down completely, unable to bear the humiliation, bursting into tears as they fled the hall one after another. The farce ended like that. All 5 members of Cecilia's group were banned for life from participating in the Nebula International Science Competition. Their actions would be publicly condemned by the authorities. As for whether they had violated the law, that would depend on whether last year's championship team chose to file a lawsuit. After the chaos subsided, one of the judges began officially announcing the competition results. When our team's name was called, the entire venue froze. Because we were the champions this year, first place. I finally let out a quiet breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The 3 team members were overwhelmed with joy, hugging one another, laughing and crying at the same time. These were the results of their own hard work. Even Ethan D. was smiling now, satisfaction gleaming clearly in his eyes. I smiled as well, leading the 4 of them onto the stage to receive our award. At that moment, I felt like my life was only just beginning. Afterward, everyone learned what had happened at the Nebula competition. The international school where Cecilia studied couldn't withstand the pressure of public outrage. They expelled her, and the others involved. At home, Mr. Su and Mrs. Su flew into a rage, berating Cecilia mercilessly. Cecilia tried to lash back at me, but Chairman Su cut her off, utterly disappointed. Enough. This time, you've truly disgraced the Su family. And even now, you refuse to change. She even blamed Mr. and Mrs. Su, claiming that if they hadn't brought me back, she wouldn't have been driven into this situation. Even Mrs. Su, who had once favored her unconditionally, was exhausted and unwilling to defend her anymore. Perhaps only then did Mr. and Mrs. Su finally realize Cecilia was a white-eyed wolf, ungrateful, poorly raised, and utterly incompetent. From that point on, they began investing far more energy into me. They would occasionally talk to me, confide in me, trying to bridge the emotional distance between us. In my heart, I only sneered. I wasn't stupid. If there were resources to be used, I would use them. I smoothly entered the Su family's company. I rejected the high-ranking position Chairman Su offered me and chose instead to start from the bottom. Step by step, slowly but surely, I began to consume this enormous beast from within. After all, it was mine anyway, wasn't it? Later on, many prestigious universities overseas extended olive branches to me, but I declined them all. I already had a domestic university I truly liked. Handling matters related to the Su family's business in China would be far more convenient this way. After the National College Entrance Examination, I was successfully admitted to the university I had chosen. What surprised me was that Ethan D. chose the same university. Facing my obvious confusion, I asked him directly, "You clearly could have chosen a better school abroad. Why follow me here?" Ethan coughed lightly and looked away. "I just like the environment there." I smiled. That sounded nice. At the very least, I now had someone I knew, and could trust, by my side. After Cecilia Su was forced to withdraw from school, she never managed to recover. Her academic performance, which had already been declining, only worsened. In the end, she couldn't even sit for the college entrance examination. The Su family did continue to support her, barely. They provided food and clothing, but the generous lifestyle she once enjoyed was gone. Chairman Su made it clear, once she turned 22, the Su family would no longer support her at all. She was abandoned by those so-called friends, and the Su family had no intention of damaging their relationships with other families for her sake. In truth, Mr. and Mrs. Su had never loved Cecilia that deeply to begin with. Everything came down to one word: profit. After Cecilia turned 22, she was formally expelled from the Su family. Mrs. Su couldn't quite bring herself to be cruel. She gave Cecilia 200,000 yuan as a final gesture. Unfortunately, she didn't receive even a hint of gratitude in return. Instead, Cecilia accused them self-righteously. "You have so much money, and you're only giving me 200,000? Do you even deserve to be called parents? From that moment on, Mr. and Mrs. Sue no longer cared about Cecilia's life or death. Later, she even tried to seek out my adoptive parents, hoping to cling to them instead. Thankfully, my parents had severed all ties with her years ago. Otherwise, she would have latched onto them shamelessly. Even so, my parents, like Mr. and Mrs. Sue, couldn't quite harden their hearts. They gave her some money as well. No one knew where Cecilia went with that money. If she could recognize her own situation and live properly, it would at least be enough for food and clothing. As for me, I began a brand new chapter of my life. After the college entrance exam, the 3 team members and Ethan D organized a small celebration for me. There were only the 5 of us at the table. The 3 of them had red eyes as they raised their glasses. Sister Vivian, a toast to you. If it weren't for you, the 3 of us would still be wasting our lives. Waiting for death. How could we possibly have received offers from prestigious universities? Yeah, another added, voice trembling. My parents are so proud. This is the first time I've ever made them feel that way. Sister Vivian, the 3rd said earnestly, when you get to university, don't forget about us. Stay in touch. Ethan D's expression darkened slightly. His face was cold, clearly displeased. I laughed, my heart blooming like a flower. In the end, I raised my glass and spoke calmly. The people you should be thanking aren't me. Every single one of you chose your own path. Your lives were shaped by your own decisions. And with that, the story came to an end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.